experience, Jackson Snyder presents. We will examine the life of our Master Yeshua by discovering his ancestors, family, and friends, by reviewing rare ancient manuscripts, and speaking to those who know him best. From the Vero Essene Yahad, now experience, Jackson Snyder presents.
Let's begin with America, a poetic ode by Robert Eisenman.
And where shall we go? To America, you say? To anywhere, we don't care where. But we are done fleeing. We are done running away. Because we were stubborn and would not give in. But we shall not give in, because we would not be absorbed like all the rest. You chased us all over the world. You people began it, and now, once again, we are in your hands again, our fate at your disposal. We the outraged people, we the people who have refused to die. But it has been at your disposal before, but we shall not give in. You, in the form of the Roman Empire, exiled us, sent us packing, expelled us from our land, plowed under our religious shrines, made of Jerusalem a waste place. And because we were stubborn, you chased us. Because we would not give in, but we shall not give in. You tormented and tortured us and would not allow us to live as part of your world. And then you fed us into the gas chambers and decimated our race. And there were still some of us left who would not give in. And then, when we wanted to go back to our own land, you said, "No, you cannot go back. There is someone else living there now." But where shall we go? Where would you have us go? And so we said, "We shall go back. There is room for us there." But you made it difficult for us, and so we fought, coming out of concentration camps, and then you left us to our own devices, in the lurch, as it were, to deal with the problems which you have created, though you had promised us and said you would stand by us, and so we had to fight again. And now, once again, we are in your hands again. Once more, we the outraged people, we the ever-recurrent exiles, we the ever-present refugees, we the people who have refused to die, though you all wished us dead 1,000 times. But the problems that exist in it are all internal and soluble, if the proper attention were paid to them, which it is not. But the problems they are bringing in their wake are insoluble and will mean the end of Western civilization as you know it, and a return to the blood-chilling and barbaric cruelty of the past, where all modern conveniences, all jet planes, ocean-going transport, and new means of computation and communication will simply be tools at their disposal, instruments behind which lies the face of man itself, to use as they choose or see fit. This is the problem in the world today, and this is the reason why all these forces are completely out of control. And in such a world, this is also why, America, in the end, you will have to face them or be swept away like all the rest, your predecessors. And do you think you are in any different position than Israel? Do you think that after they do away with Israel, they will not be in a position to do the same to you? Don't you think that one day you will be in the same position as she? Do you think that after they are done with her, they will not then turn to you? And that you too will then be surrounded by the masses of the peoples of the earth, from Russia, China, the Arab world, Africa. And don't you think one day they will cut off your oil? Anyhow, when they see how easily it can be done? And who do you think will come to rescue you then? Do you think that you too will then be alone? And who will come to your aid and stand by your side? Therefore, I say unto you, stand by her now and help her, for she is but a miniature embodiment of you, alone in an uncharted and unfriendly sea, if ever you wish to avoid the same circumstances yourself.
Good morning. It's a privilege to be able to come to you on Shabbat and to give a message. This particular one is a difficult one for me. I hope it's easier for you, but I certainly appreciate the opportunity. The title of the message is As in Former Times. The text comes from the Epistle of Barnabas, first of all, 16. Now I will tell you about the holy place, and how these wretched men, so deceived, place their hopes in things rather than on the power behind who made them. For in a manner quite like that of the tribes of Israel, they consecrated only things. What does Yahweh say, rendering their consecratings inapplicable? Pay attention. Look, those who destroyed this place will rebuild it. Through their war, our enemy has cleansed it. Now, both the enemy and their slaves will rebuild it. And there's your historical marker in the Epistle of Barnabas. To complete the reading of the scripture, we go back to chapter 15. Moreover, it's written in the 10 words about the Shabbat that Yahweh spoke to Moshe face to face on Mount Sinai. He set aside the Shabbat of Yahweh with clean hands and heart. And in another place he says, if my sons will keep Shabbatot, I will place my mercy upon them. He also speaks of the Shabbat in the beginning of creation. And Elohim made the works of his hands in 6 days and finished them altogether by the 7th day, in which he paused, and he set it apart. Consider, children, what he says. He finished it in 6 days. Yes, he tells us that in 6,000 years, Yahweh will make an end of it altogether. For a day is as 1,000 years to him. So, my children, in 6 days, that is, in 6,000 years, will all such evil be brought to an end. Let us pray. Indeed, Father, may the situation of our ancient friend Barnabas come alive for us in some respect through your sacred word. And we petition you through your providing word to restore our present sister, Patricia Craner, to full health and service. So let it be, so shall it be. The purpose of my story is fictional. I should say, it is a fictional story. Some names have been changed to expose the guilty. The purpose of this story is to give us some contemporary perspective on life in Israel during the beginning of the 5th millennium, the 5th 1,000 years, the last days of Joseph Barnabas. In the current election, South Florida coalesces its left-leaning political agenda through the state and is thus able to elect the latest charismatic socialist contenders for its government offices. Shortly into the new governor's tenure, she reveals her agenda and that of her powerful secret cabal of undergrounders to go with the winner by bringing Florida in as the latest satellite of the People's Republic. All that was hidden is now revealed before anyone realizes it. This communist power, now centered in Tallahassee, puts forward a frightening plan for the near future. We shall soon nationalize farms, businesses, and religious organizations throughout the state for the people's good and for the common benefit, she says. Affiliated militias, armies, in fact, the products of bribery and promise, which have been prepared by the military of the People's Republic in Mexico, now sees Florida's expansive military establishment through the eastern part of the state. Through threat of invasion, most of the cities acquiesce to the pressure and in no time yield their resources to the new pink regime. Meanwhile, the U.S. government, crippled by shock and disbelief, this couldn't happen here, hastily, without a solid strategy, execute a military incursion into Jacksonville to set things aright. To the astonishment of all, their soft invasion is routed out by the surprising strength of Florida's new government, industry, military complex. The U.S. High Command is completely humiliated. And the demagogic propaganda machine in Tallahassee steps up its new soapbox machine, proclaiming U.S. forces to be imperialist invaders of a new and sovereign nation. The new Republicans of Florida announced that states' rights dictate if Florida chooses to secede from the Union, they have every right to do so, even if the might that undergirds such a secession is of foreign origin. Before long, and after short negotiations, the Joint Chiefs at Fort Benning see no other way forward than to allow the annexation of South Georgia to the new Florida after receiving nuclear threats from secret Chinese military bases in Mexico and Cuba. Soon, the financial assets of the United States are seized by governments in the exploding Far East markets, which immediately forces an end to U.S. influence over this critical region of the world. The World Bank has little choice now but to declare the yuan and the dong as new world monetary standards, as backed by the commodities of rice and salt. North America has been invaded for the first time since 1812. Washington sees little recourse or response now but to appease, at least for the time being. The new nation comprising East Florida and South Georgia is officially referred to as the PRF, which stands for the People's Republic of Florida, or in short, just Florida, which is the way Florida is pronounced in the People's Republic's sphere of influence. Americans find it hard to pronounce the new name. However, West Florida, that is the Florida Panhandle, is very different from the rest of the state. The West is politically conservative. The people, by and large, still cling to their guns and religion. Many secret voluntary organizations have stockpiled armories of illegal weapons of every type, smuggling in from the military bases of the western USA. Bibles in West Florida never had just collected dust on the shelf, but were put into practice through the sage advice of the coalition of conservative churches, which includes most Baptist and Pentecostal churches and churches of Christ. If they can't preserve themselves, rest assured anyway, for Jesus will descend with angels and save them before the hostilities have ceased. This is guaranteed, they say, by their most recent interpretation of the book of Revelations. Pensacola, known for its armed forces bases as well as being the Christian capital of all Florida, holds out for repelling any attempt at invasion from the east, and in the course of a few weeks is able to consolidate spiritual and military advantage over the entire panhandle from Pensacola to the outskirts of Leon County. The former state capital in Tallahassee is centralized just south of Orlando at party headquarters. Thousands of sympathetic people and organizations from all over the western United States come to the aid of West Florida through Mobile, Alabama. The new consolidation of the Panhandle becomes known as Five Flags Alamo. The popular motto is, with God, there ain't going to be no sixth flag. This is a proud boast, since Five Flags Alamo is only a little larger than the nation of Israel turned on its side and shaped the same as Israel and locked in on one side by the sea as is Israel and is now a sea swarming with false flag Chinese military ships. But the patriotic folks of West Florida, now so despised by the liberal establishment in the eastern states, have absolutely no chance of staving off foreign invaders. This is no matter how many plans they make, guns they shoot, prayers they pray. They just don't have enough land, people, infrastructure, manufacturing, or weapons. Just like Israel against the Roman Empire of Barnabas' day. Five Flags Alamo must rely more heavily on their Christian faith and heavenly rescue than on guns and glory. But that miracle is never to be realized. After a few initial victories, the joint People's Republic forces of a foreign power put 5 Flags Alamo on notice. Unless there's an immediate, unconditional surrender, they will engage in the shock and awe tactics of the previous Gulf War, raining down fire from north and from east, not relenting until the earth is scorched and ruined. Nothing of value will be left behind after such an invasion, promises Her Excellency, the governor. Vegetation will be devastated by flammable chemicals like napalm. Lakes and rivers will be polluted and poisoned, worse than they already are. And all domestic animal life wasted right along with every single human being who resists. For resistance is indeed futile. The 5 Flags Alamo War will last 7 full years to the day. The final stronghold, the Pensacola Naval Air Station, an area in which over 3 million people are even now trapped, will fall. Any elite survivors, it is promised, will be executed, and the rest sent off into the backward backwater hells of inner Asia. The Pensacola Naval Air Station and surrounding area, cordoned off by walls and waterways and protected by armed forces personnel within, would only be able to hold out for 3 months. During its end time, a religious revival takes place, the likes of which humanity has never before witnessed. And that revival is centered in Brownsville. Signs and wonders are rife within the blockade. Though many prophets and preachers are now dead from the war, the survivors are whipping up the rest of the people with promises of supernatural interference and last-minute rescues. Church altars are still found in abundance, as are the impressions of 1,000,000 knees upon their cushions. But instead of angels, uncounted tons of bombs descend upon Pensacola. The aftermath? 225,000 dead lie in mass open graves called the pits. Another 250,000 wounded and captured, most of which are exported far and wide as slaves, with only their former religious fervor remaining within. Every slave that goes forth becomes an evangelist. From then on, being found engaging in religious subterfuge or even possession of a Bible is rewarded by a vacation to a re-education camp in Cuba or Mexico. Still, what 5 Flags Alamo military survivors did remain are carted off to Guantanamo Bay in prison ships, their executions to be televised as part of the Triumph Through Mutual Cooperation holidays, just proclaimed by the Florida government. The overall devastation is beyond comprehension. And even as 5 Flags Alamo is being annexed into the People's Republic, the word gets out that one faithful prophet yet remains alive, a son of encouragement, and it is noised abroad that that one is claiming a kind of victory. In other sorts of words, saying, through their war, the enemy has cleansed us, but what they have destroyed, they shall rebuild. True faith, beleaguered faith, begins again from the rubble of West Florida to the labor camps of Cambodia, just like it did in the aftermath of the first Jewish rebellion of 70 AD, where slaves were sent out into the world to carry the message of the gospel. One true saint, an evangelist of truth remains, and with one divine word of hope from an ancient source, he proclaims, it will come to pass in the last day that Yahweh will deliver up the sheep of his pasture once their fold is scattered and their ensign given over to destruction, all completed according to what Yahweh has spoken. Epistle of Barnabas 16:5. The restoration began in Barnabas' time and extended through long ages, 2 millennia, unto today, which is defined by him as the millennium of restoration, when sinners are converted, the name glorified, and all creation restored from ashes as new. That's the backstory of the Epistle of Barnabas in contemporary terms, in contemporary places. These very things that I am talking about, using Florida as a guide, were happening in Israel at the time he writes. And in the aftermath of the destruction of Jerusalem, he sends out a note to whoever might be left to come together. This same epistle that projects the future down to our very time. It's no wonder the ecumenical councils of the church had to bury it early. The purpose of the story I've just narrated is to bring home to you the kind of calamity that descended upon the saints of our original faith in the days that Joseph Barnabas was living in the flesh, to show you that he survived and that he wrote about the calamity of his day. Can you understand the gravity of this letter? Barnabas' words are able to cut through the static, even now as we attempt, through his words, to pick up the pieces of a true religion lost and only now recently rediscovered. Like Barnabas then, a few lone voices are calling us together today to reclaim that original faith, while the Father continually uncovers untainted writings and manuscripts from the depths of the earth and antiquity to be utilized to overcome the loss, perversity, and decay of the sixth millennium, which we have recently completed, unto this season, as Barnabas explains, the seventh millennium, a new last day. And when our day is done, as all authentic interpretations proclaim, the great king will transfer ownership of the entire perfected cosmos back to the original creator, completing the 8 days of salvation history and beginning our new resurrection journey to the stars. Now consider again these words from Barnabas about the end of all evil. Yes, he tells us that in 6 years, Yahweh will make an end of it. 6,000 years, He tells us that in 6,000 years, Yahweh will make an end of it. That is, evil. Altogether, for a day is as 1,000 years to him. So, my children, in 6 days, that is, in 6,000 years, will all such evil be brought to an end. In our 7,000-year day, which we call the millennium, the Kilioi, evil, wrong, and injustice, devils, demons, evil spirits are all to be exposed, discarded, destroyed, replaced with equitable justice described in the sacred books.
You may contact us at Jackson Snyder Presents at this email address, veroyahad@gmail.com. That is veroyahad@gmail.com. And let me remind you, you are listening to Jackson Snyder Presents with your host tonight, Bogdan G. Shrumkov. Thank you for listening. We'll be right back. Jackson Snyder Present is back. Join us now for more of this interesting discussion.
And we are just at the beginning of this millennium. The evil of every imaginable kind is being exposed to our scrutiny in our day, so that we may behold its ugliness, so that we might judge angels. The coming king will enforce the values herein recorded until the whole is perfectly completed. Barnabas makes it clear that we are at the beginning of the days of perfecting, not the days of destruction. And for evil to be eliminated, it must first show itself in all its diabolical glory before it's defeated. It must be exposed. But what we have seen here at the ending of the 6th millennia and the beginning of the 7th is all hell breaking loose in advance of being destroyed. Not the earth, but the evil. To explain, Barnabas tells us without mystery that he's living in the 5th millennium of salvation history. The 5th millennium since the days of Adam. Bringing Adam's seed to Barnabas' time, that is 75 AD when he writes, preceding the 6th millennium, roughly according to Bible chronology, 996 AD to 1996 AD, which in turn precedes the 7th millennium, which began roughly in 1996, where he tells us plainly that the end of evil will come sometime in the 7th millennium, which we have entered within the last 25 years. Even Joseph Dumont is in agreement with me on that, surprisingly enough. Oh, it's easier to figure. It's easy to figure the 7 days, the 7,000 years of salvation history. All one needs is a Bible and a calculator. And we're in it. If it's true, we're in it. But even now, at the beginning of the 7th millennium, evil and depravity is not in full swing, not yet. But the signs of the times are already showing us a huge mass of unpardonable sin being exposed to ultimately be destroyed in due time if we can get our act together. Don't expect those earth-shattering calamities prognosticated by false prophets, whitewashed tombs, Baptists with tally-tote, keeping you in suspense with fear, using fear and mysticism and special effects to fleece you. Oh, they know better. Expect instead both knowledge and evil to increase. They often go hand in hand. Expect, maybe in your own lifetime, holiness to break through, but not from where you might expect. Holiness, because long before it's over, you who are faithful to Elohim's ways, to his Shabbatot, to his mitzvot, will be working harder than you ever had when you were in the disguise of human flesh. For you'll be fighting major battles in minor places with weapons that are not carnal, but empowered by the force of holiness. There's so much more, but we're so lacking in attention now and in time. It's almost too late. But in the days when we no longer have a brain, we will be able to soak up our Master's living waters like a sponge. Barnabas left Paul years before over the rejection of the Torah. I have no doubt about that. Galatians tells us the same. Now, Paul is gone. Mark is gone. James is gone. Peter is gone. Barnabas and his son Clement are alone in that devastated world, seeking out true believers who have not yet shed their blood into the cup of the martyrs. He has been preserved through the maelstrom in order to seek and find that which is now really lost, the few surviving believers in Israel. Yes, the epistle plainly implies that he is to provide a rallying point, a fatherhood, so to speak, even though doing so in that climate is extremely dangerous in that day. His only method of evangelism then was the universal Greek language everyone in the world spoke it, and the new codex book form, a great innovation over scrolls. That's how the apostles got their message out, so ubiquitously throughout the earth in a very short time. Technology. In our day, our unique and scarce assets are the universal English language, rather than the Greek, and the ability to self-publish and distribute literature without cost. A huge innovation over the simple codex. Let us now not forget the spirit-filled, spirit-thrilling voice. And in our day, that spirit-thrilling voice may be cast to every corner of the earth and throughout space with minimum physical effort. Only cooperation is needed. And even the severely disabled can easily use these extraordinary resources to let the voice of Yahweh be known. But let us remember, these resources only became available at the beginning of the 7th millennium, a mere 25 years ago. It's more than coincidence. Mark my words, we had better use them to the fullest now, because before we know it, probably in what's left of my lifetime, these windows of opportunity will most assuredly be gone. Our day is finally the beginning of the day of salvation, and the day is 1,000 years long. Can you get that? We have entered into it, no matter what they say. Like I said, it only takes a Bible and a calculator. We are here at the very beginning, and being here is not necessarily an act of our will. Our being here at this time, in this organization, even here on this broadcast, is an act of Elohim. You are here with a divine appointment. And even the means by which we come together today, that is online, through the air, is predicted in these early books. Though those who predicted probably couldn't imagine what it would actually look like. The too short time when even a tongue-tied, blind little prophet can reach the entire world is our time, no matter how far away the joyful listener might be. And we are here, discovering new apostolic teachings meant just for our time. Discovering once again the faith passed down from ages before to ours through a very small number of saints. And we wonder, has Elohim put us here by mistake? Who, me? Is this line of logic too hard for us? Or are we in fact the very counterparts of the apostles of yore? The apostles who are being heard even through the complete destruction of their country and their temple and their religious foundations, their lost books and agendas burning in our hands and hearts. Is our assumption that we are the new founders of the faith of our beloved King and his people mistaken? Or just a grandiose boast? I've said what we're trying to do was a matter of prophetic word from the book of Enoch 103, something no one else has ever tried to do. Unity in diversity? Is this just a rash notion of an old man? No! Who else has discovered these things that I now have no time to explain? Who on the face of the earth has actually paid more attention to them, but as a curiosity only, to be taken up on the commode and left there the rest of the time? Who is it that are holding these precious, prescriptive, prophetic little books today? Who is taking them seriously? Books that were specifically meant for our time, which were excised from the New Testament by the church for reasons perhaps that even they didn't know. Who else is correcting the errors of the scribes, publishing them anew, freely distributing them, teaching them, broadcasting them, calling people to them, willing to spend the time it takes to explain them, abiding by their teachings, and working to force alliances? Who is doing this? To my knowledge, just you, 12 people and I, and maybe a couple more. No, we should be happy that we who are apostles of the Most High. This is not a happy job. We do not go skipping and dancing from cloud to cloud, looking forward to weekend tambourine shakings and shoutings. And though Barnabas comes to us in love and peace and calls us his children, he is not a happy little preacher. He's lost thousands who had thankfully heard him in the great tribulation that he's just lived through somehow. By divine appointment? No, he's not happy because he missed the rapture and is left here alone to do the work of those who shed the martyr's blood. He tries again. He puts on for us as a happy disguise the pie-eating, coffee-drinking persona of a fatherly pastor in hopes of making new friends. And though he has been through hell and back, having given his property away for the way, having walked 1,000 miles with Paul, having been successful in evangelism in Antioch, he has to start all over again with nothing more than a scorched earth and 2 or 3 people who understand. My birthday was yesterday, 67 years old. You wonder where all this time went. But in looking back, I see that so many of my friends, well, virtually all of my old friends are dead. My friends were always older than I, 15, 20, 25 years older. They are all gone. I received a photograph from my great aunt years ago. On that photograph was pictured the Roberts family reunion of the year 1917. And there are probably 7,500 people in that picture. They used to have family reunions, you know. And on the back of that picture, this great aunt of mine, now long departed, had written down the names of everyone on the front. And as time went on, she used a red pen and started crossing out names as they died. Crossing them out in 1930s, 1940s, 50s. She herself died in 1970. But when I received this picture, on the back of it, every name was crossed off. And she just wrote a little epitaph, which said, "Now they're all gone, and I am alone." Considering last night at a little birthday party some folk put together for me, and seeing the few aged relatives of the older generation that happened to be there, I felt how selfish I have been to keep myself in a little room on a computer when such giants of my life as these were still alive. Soon, they'll be crossed off with the back of a picture. And if I don't predecease them, I will be able to write the same epitaph. They're all gone. I'm the only one left. I use that illustration just to give you more of a personal idea of where this man Barnabas was in his life. And the similitude to Florida in trying to bring his nearly exact situation down to a local level that we might understand using our own realities as a breadboard for a new idea. This starting over thing, it's hard for a man pushing 70 years of age, as Barnabas was. Hard for a grandfather who's lost so many children. And he knows, as I do in previous times, religion, faith, worship, discipline, true teachings are nothing more to the religious hobbyists who take up his precious time as though they were taking the free meat offered on the temple's bargain counter, then throw it to the dogs. People will not know the value of righteousness until they are tested. And by that time, it'll be too late. Because our time, unlike his, isn't an age of great tribulation, but an age of great delusion and disappointment. Because, like Rachel, the true sons and daughters are not. And like Rachel, Barnabas grieves. And we grieve like Barnabas, that sinners be converted in this time of ennui, that the name be glorified in this time of cursing, and that creation be restored in this time of blissful decadence. Let's get it. Let's get at it. That's what the Yahad of our forefathers and mothers was all about. The togetherness, the like-mindedness, the putting off of our own little pet doctrines, putting them to death for the sake of something so much bigger, something that even the most astute of prophets of our day have not yet discerned. This is the first part of this message. There'll be another one next time I do this. But I hope at this time you can see that there is a great deal of gravity in what we are doing right now and the time we are doing. I guess it takes older just to be able to look back in retrospect and see the interpretation of Revelation changing by these prophets every 5 years to suit whatever the situation that they were facing happened to be, rather than what the prophetic word actually says. Let's get it together. And in doing so, let's pray together that sevenfold millennial prayer written on the very lip of the seventh millennium. We do this quietly. I give you a suggestion, and you spend just a little bit of time praying for that specific suggestion. Let's begin. Pray for the presence, the parousia of the Master Yeshua soon. Pray for the return of Yahweh's ordinances to bless all people. Take a little time. Pray for the elect, the set apart, the righteous, and all martyrs and witnesses. Take a few seconds. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, chiefly, and peace on earth. Take 10 seconds. Number 5, pray for the restoration of all creation, for that's what we're here for in this time. Pray for the advent of equitable justice for all living creatures. And the 7th, Pray for the manifestation of the visible reign of the Master Sovereign over all the world. Take just a few seconds. And finally, on the 8th day, pray for your Mivakarim, your Avarim, your Seferim, your Shoterim, your Shamshim, your Morim, your Rohim of the Yahad, and for all people who share the vision. Amen ve Amen.